You shouldn't be here. He's coming for you.
It's a sound you can't ignore, and yet every fiber of your being begs you to. The low, rhythmic thud echoes from the back of the house, almost too regular. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, pause. My heart hammers in my chest as I sit in the dark living room, the silence between the thuds gnawing at my nerves. It's not the house settling. I know that much. I haven't been here long, but long enough to recognize that sound. I stand, the floorboards groaning beneath me. My fingers graze the edge of the flashlight, but something stops me. A whisper, just a flicker of a voice, faint but unmistakable. Don't go. It's not mine. The air feels thicker now, pressing against me, suffocating me. I take one step, then another, compelled against all logic, to move toward the source of the sound. The hallway is too dark, too still. The thud is louder now, closer, as if it's waiting for me. And then, in a single instant, everything stops. The sound. The air. The house itself. I freeze, my breath caught in my throat. The silence is worse than the noise. I don't know what's worse, the waiting or knowing it's too late to stop whatever's about to happen. I hadn't meant to break the rules, but somewhere along the way I did. And now I can feel the weight of that choice pressing down on me like a vice. Each breath I take getting harder, colder. The house was supposed to be a safe haven, an old weathered farmhouse nestled at the edge of town, a perfect escape from the chaos of my life. It was everything I needed. Quiet, isolated, and surprisingly cheap for something that looked so picturesque. When I first moved in, I thought it was the kind of place where you could escape your demons. I'd even found a little comfort in the house's eerie stillness. The cracked windows, the creaking floorboards, they were a part of the charm. I told myself that the old-fashioned furniture, the dusty curtains, the thick shadows in the corners were just quirks, nothing to fear. But, as the days wore on, I realized something else. This house was never meant to be lived in. It was a place meant to be forgotten. A place to be avoided. I just didn't know it yet. The first night, I saw it, the warning. It was in the little things. The odd silence that swallowed the air after sunset. The way the clock would always strike midnight even though I hadn't heard the chimes earlier in the evening. I would lie in bed, the covers pulled tight around me, my mind racing with the stories the neighbors had told me. Some houses you don't mess with, one woman had whispered, almost pleading. You don't open certain doors, and you don't stay out after dark. I thought it was superstition, old tales passed down from one person to the next, designed to keep people inside at night. But by the time the sun sank below the horizon on that first evening, I found myself facing the cellar door, the one that had been locked, the one no one talked about. It was strange, really. The door had an old rusty chain wrapped around its handles. Its wood warped and brittle from age. The key to it had been left on the kitchen counter, right next to the instructions I had been given. Don't touch the cellar. Don't go down there. Ever. I could hear the tremor in the woman's voice as she gave me the key. I saw the look in her eyes, the kind of look you don't ignore. But I did. I ignored it. I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I had just unpacked my things. The silence in the house pressed on my chest, suffocating me with its stillness. So, curiosity won over caution. I walked down the hall, each step feeling heavier than the last. My hand brushed the edge of the cellar door, and I felt a jolt of static race up my arm, but I told myself it was just the electricity in the old wood. I shouldn't have done it. I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a quiet click, and the door swung open on its own. That was the moment the air in the house changed. The temperature dropped. The shadows deepened. Something was watching me. I didn't feel alone. Not anymore. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring into the dark, endless void below. The stairs descended sharply, vanishing into thick, black shadows. I couldn't see anything. Nothing at all. I felt my heartbeat quicken, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My instincts screamed at me to close the door, to walk away and never look back. But I couldn't. The curiosity was stronger than the fear. It always is, isn't it? I took one step, then another. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, and the sound of my footsteps echoed through the stairwell. They sounded wrong, hollow. I should have stopped, but I didn't. There was something down there. I knew it. The same way you know that a bad dream is real, even before you wake up. I could feel it in my bones. Halfway down, I heard it. A whisper. Soft at first, like a rustle of paper, but then it grew louder, clearer. Don't go down there. I froze again, my breath caught in my throat. I was certain I had heard it, but I was alone. I turned, ready to race back upstairs, when I saw it. A figure standing in the corner of the cellar. It was tall, slender, but somehow it felt too wrong to be human. The air around it shimmered, like a heat wave over the pavement on a hot summer's day, but colder. The shadows clung to it, and its eyes. I couldn't make out the color, but they burned. Piercing, burning eyes. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. The figure didn't move at first. It just stared at me, its form barely visible, like smoke against smoke. And then, slowly, it raised a hand, fingers long and thin, pointing directly at me. You shouldn't be here. The words came, not from its mouth, but in my head, as if they were my own thoughts, but I knew they weren't. I wanted to look away, to run, but the gaze held me in place. Before I could react, the door slammed shut above me. I was trapped. The darkness swallowed everything. The figure disappeared, leaving only a feeling of unbearable weight on my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, and all I could hear was the silence of the house, pressing in from all sides. I stumbled back to the stairs, fumbling for the door, but the air was thick now. It wasn't like before. The house felt alive, watching, waiting. The footsteps I had heard earlier seemed to mock me now, an omen that had been building since the moment I stepped inside. I ran. Up the stairs, through the hall, and into the living room where everything was still, too still. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence, and I realized with a start, it had been midnight for hours. It was always midnight now. The hour had become a trap, and I had walked right into it. That night, as I lay in bed, the whispers began again. Faint at first, almost inaudible. But they grew louder as the hours passed, the cold in the air growing thicker with each minute. And I realized, with a sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach, that I had already broken the first rule. It wasn't just the cellar door I had opened. It was the door to something else. Something worse. I couldn't go back. I knew by the morning that the house had changed. The light streaming through the curtains was no longer warm, no longer inviting. It was harsh and cold, like the sun itself was tired of trying to push through the oppressive weight that clung to the walls. I could feel it, an unsettling energy buzzing in the air. The house wasn't just a structure anymore. It was something else, something sentient, and it was aware of me. I tried to dismiss it, tried to tell myself it was my mind, my paranoia playing tricks. It was nothing more than the fear of the unknown, the weight of the dark cellar pressing down on me. But deep down I knew better. The whispers didn't stop. They began the moment I closed my eyes, as if they had been waiting, lurking in the quiet, gathering strength. They were faint at first, a soft murmur I could barely hear, like the rustling of leaves in a breeze too gentle to be real. But as the hours ticked by, they grew stronger, clearer, more insistent. Each whisper sounded like a voice from a memory I couldn't place. Distant, familiar, terrifying. Don't go back. They're watching. You can't escape. I lay in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. The darkness in the corners of the room seemed to grow darker the longer I watched. I turned over, pulling the covers tighter around me, trying to shut it out, but it wouldn't go away. The whispers seeped into my thoughts, curling around them like fingers. It felt like something was inside my head, something that wasn't mine, but so familiar it made my skin crawl. I kept telling myself it was just fear, just the house messing with my mind. But then the knocks started. 3 knocks at the door, slow and deliberate. I froze, barely breathing, listening to the silence that followed. There was no one there. I checked the door, the windows, the hallway. Nothing. Yet, the feeling remained. The house was alive, it was waiting. I couldn't leave. I knew I couldn't. Something had already reached out to me, and I had answered its call. There was no way out now. I could feel it in the air like a tangible presence, always there, always watching. I wasn't alone anymore. The days became a blur. The sun barely rose, the nights stretched on forever. Each time I tried to leave, something stopped me. The doors wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't budge. It was like the house was holding me in place, refusing to let me escape. I would stand by the door, hand on the handle, but my body wouldn't move. My legs wouldn't carry me. That's when I started hearing the footsteps. At first, it was just one pair, slow and deliberate, moving through the hall at night, as though someone were walking from room to room. I would hear them outside my door, stop, and then move away again, always just out of sight. But sometimes, when I was certain I was alone, I'd hear a second set of footsteps, lighter, quicker, almost like the shuffle of a child's bare feet. The sound would follow me, always in the shadows, always just behind me. I couldn't escape it. I tried to ignore it. I tried to tell myself I was being ridiculous. The house was old. The floors creaked. The wind played tricks. But as the days dragged on, it became harder to deny what I was hearing, what I was feeling. One night, as I sat at the table in the dim light of the kitchen, I heard it again, that whisper, clear and cold. Don't trust them. I jerked my head up, looking around. I was alone, yet I felt as though someone had just breathed down my neck. I reached for the light, but it flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. The whispers returned, louder now, almost frantic. Get out. I had no choice. I had to face it. I couldn't keep hiding from it, pretending it wasn't real. So I went to the cellar. The key was cold in my hand as I descended the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The whispers followed me, more urgent now, pressing in on my mind, drowning out everything else. When I reached the bottom, I saw the shadow first. Not the figure from before. This was something different. It moved like smoke, drifting through the dark, barely there, yet somehow filling every corner of the room. It flickered at the edge of my vision, always just out of reach, but when I turned to look directly at it, it was gone. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest, the air around me thick with dread. The temperature had dropped again, and I could see my breath. It was so cold, it felt like I had stepped into the heart of winter. And then I saw it. The wall that hadn't been there before. A smooth, pale surface, stretched across the far side of the room, where there had been nothing but darkness before. There were symbols carved into it, strange and twisting, like something out of an ancient language. My fingers hovered above them, drawn to them, but I pulled back before I could touch the wall. It felt wrong, too wrong. But the whisper was louder now, practically shouting in my mind. You opened the door. The voice wasn't just in my head anymore. It was in the room with me, and the air around me crackled with something dark. I turned, looking for the source, but there was no one there. The shadows moved, swirling in ways they shouldn't, bending and twisting like they had a life of their own. I stepped back, my heart racing. This wasn't a house anymore. It was a tomb, a place where something had been buried long ago. Something that was never meant to be disturbed. The house was changing again. The walls were closing in, the air thick with something I couldn't name. I turned, desperate to leave, but the stairs, they weren't where they should be. The familiar wooden steps had been replaced with jagged stones, slick with dampness, leading downward into a pit of blackness. I had to climb out. Had to escape. I turned to look back at the wall, but something was different now. The symbols on it, they were moving, shifting. They were no longer static, carved into the stone. They were alive, twisting in a rhythmic pattern, like they were calling to me, beckoning me closer. Then I heard it. A scream. A voice, so shrill it cut through the air like glass shattering. It was close. So close. I turned, but there was no one there. The room was empty, just the wall and me, the symbols flickering like flames. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I had to run. But the house wouldn't let me. The walls were closing in, pressing on me, the shadows stretching out to grab me. The whispers turned to laughter, cold and mocking. And then the lights went out. I was plunged into darkness, completely alone in the silence, with only the sound of my ragged breath to keep me company. The house had taken me, and there was no going back. I could feel the walls tightening around me, could hear the sound of footsteps behind me again. The door I had locked behind me was now open, and it was waiting for me to step back inside. The whispers told me to stay. They told me I couldn't leave. And I realized, with a sickening twist in my stomach, that they were right. I was already too far gone, and I would never escape. The darkness in the cellar seemed to press against my skin, the air itself thick with something I couldn't name, but felt deep in my bones. Every breath I took tasted like ash. I stood frozen, trembling, my back pressed against the now familiar wall that seemed to breathe, its surface shifting and warping, as though it were alive, a thing that had been waiting for me to notice. I could feel the whispering behind my eyes, a voice I couldn't escape. You shouldn't have come back. The voice was different now. It wasn't just inside my head. It was in the air, in the walls, in the very shadows around me. It was everywhere. It was the house. It was it. I tried to turn away, tried to run, but my feet wouldn't move. My legs were locked, my body frozen, and no matter how hard I willed myself to leave, I couldn't. It was like the house had wrapped its cold fingers around me and refused to let go. I could feel it tightening with each passing second, dragging me closer to something far worse than I had ever imagined. The shadows shifted again, swirling in unnatural patterns, as if drawn by a force that didn't belong in this world. There was something watching me, something old, something hungry. It appeared then, in the space between breaths, slipping from the shadows with a grace that was both terrifying and unnatural. The air turned colder, sharper, and the room seemed to stretch and twist in a way that made my stomach churn. I could feel it, something heavy, something ancient, something far older than the house, far older than anything I could comprehend. At first, it was just a silhouette, an outline in the dark. It stood still, watching me, a figure of shifting shadows and empty space, like it wasn't meant to exist. Its form flickered like a mirage, growing darker the longer I stared. I couldn't make out any details. No face, no body, no shape. Just a dark void where something should have been. And then it spoke. Not in words, but in thoughts, in feelings. It burrowed into my mind, its presence suffocating me from all directions. You shouldn't have ignored the rules, it whispered. But it wasn't a whisper. It was a voice that didn't need sound to be heard. It pulsed, reverberated through my skull, thrumming with a dreadful clarity. My head felt like it was going to crack open. You're too late. I stumbled back, desperate to get away, but I was trapped. The walls seemed to move in on me, twisting and pulling me toward the center of the room. The space between us collapsed, and before I could react, the shadows closed in. I was no longer standing in a cellar. I was in a vast, endless space, stretching out beyond the edges of my vision. The walls had vanished. The air was thick with the weight of something unseen. The floor beneath me felt unstable, as if the very ground was breathing, shifting, waiting for something to break. The figure in the shadows, it was the house, it was the walls, it was the dark, was moving now, slipping between the spaces I couldn't see, circling me, and it grew closer with each breath. I could feel its gaze, not through eyes but through everything. I felt it in my lungs, my stomach, my chest. It wasn't just looking at me, it was inside me, consuming me from within. My heartbeat echoed in the emptiness, thudding in my chest, faster, harder, as if I could outrun it. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't escape the suffocating silence. The whispers came again. Louder now, louder than my thoughts, louder than the beating of my heart. You knew the rules. You broke them anyway. The ground beneath me tilted, and I stumbled, losing my balance. I felt weightless as if I was floating, but the vertigo dragged me deeper into the abyss. The shadows stretched, elongated, reaching for me like fingers made of night. I turned, desperate for some way out, some way to escape, but the house had swallowed me whole. A sharp scream tore through the silence. My scream, but it didn't sound like me. It was distorted, a mix of fear and pain and something else, something darker. I had to get out. I had to. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of me. It was a man, or at least it had been once. His skin was pale, stretched tight over the bones, like it had been hanging there for too long, too empty. His eyes were wide and vacant, hollow pits where life had long since fled. He opened his mouth, and the words that came out weren't words at all. They were fragments of sound, broken and jagged, like someone trying to speak underwater. It comes for us all. I staggered back, terrified, but there was nowhere to go. I had no ground beneath my feet. The shadows closed in around him, swallowing him whole, leaving only the faint echo of his voice behind. It never stops. And then I understood. The house wasn't just a place. It was a trap, a waiting room for those who had crossed the line. I wasn't the first to step over that threshold. Others had come before me, and they had all ended the same way. Trapped, forgotten, consumed by the darkness that lived here. This wasn't about the cellar. It wasn't about the rules. It was about the house, the thing that lurked within it, feeding off those foolish enough to ignore its warning. I had done it. I had crossed the line. And now it was my turn to be consumed. The walls around me began to move again, shifting like liquid, like the house itself was alive, alive with something that had been waiting for centuries. The shadows stretched and twisted in ways they shouldn't, as if the very fabric of reality was bending, warping in on itself. And I could feel it, the pressure, the weight of something ancient and wrong pressing against my chest, against my mind. And then, through the dark, I heard it again. The whisper. The voice that had followed me from the moment I had stepped inside. It will never let you go. I tried to scream. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My throat felt dry, choked by the weight of it, by the understanding that I had made the mistake that had brought me here. The darkness closed in, tighter than before. The shadows wrapped around me like chains, pulling me down, dragging me into the void. I could feel myself fading, like a candle whose light was being snuffed out. You're already here. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was the figure in the shadows, and its eyes. They weren't eyes at all. They were pits of nothingness, eyes made of the very darkness that surrounded me, and in them I saw something that sent a final shiver down my spine. I saw nothing, and then I was gone. When I woke, it was not to the soft warmth of the morning sun. No, it was to cold. Absolute cold, the kind that settles deep into your bones and refuses to let go. The kind that makes every breath feel like it's coming from a place far deeper than you thought possible. The air around me was thick, suffocating, pressing against my chest as though the house itself was alive and clutching me to its depths. I opened my eyes and everything was wrong. The room I was in, or what I thought was a room, was a twisted reflection of what I had known. The walls were cracked, but it wasn't the old farmhouse I had stepped into days before. No, this place felt like a nightmare made flesh, a world where the rules of reality didn't apply, where shadows stretched too far, too long, and everything, every corner, every crevice, breathed with a strange, dark energy. The floor beneath me was damp, cold stone, slick with something I didn't dare name. My hands shook as I pushed myself up, the weight of the darkness pressing on me like the hands of unseen things, all pulling me deeper into the house, deeper into whatever nightmare had become my reality. I had been here before, hadn't I? This place. I knew it. But not like this. No, this was different. The air felt wrong, the silence heavier. I could feel something watching me. Not just one thing, but all of them. The eyes of the house. The eyes of those who had come before me. I looked around, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. But the house had changed again. The door that should have led back to the cellar, back to where it all started, was gone. In its place was a narrow, dark hallway that stretched on endlessly, the walls too close together, pressing in from all sides. The hallway seemed to pulse with life, like veins, like arteries of the house itself, wrapping me in its grip. I stood still, feeling the weight of the silence close in around me. I could hear something in the distance, a low rumble, a thud. It was rhythmic, like footsteps, but it was wrong. It was too slow, too deliberate. It wasn't the kind of sound you could escape. It was the sound of the house breathing. And then the whispering started. At first it was faint, a faint murmur in the corners of my mind. But it grew louder with each passing second, until it was almost deafening. The voices were a cacophony, each one indistinguishable from the others, overlapping and crashing together, like 1,000 voices calling out in unison, their words cutting through my thoughts. You shouldn't have stayed. You shouldn't have come back. They know. They know what you've done. There is no escape. I slammed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voices were in my head now, every whisper a jagged edge, tearing through my mind. The pressure in my chest increased with every breath, until I thought my ribs might crack, until I thought I might collapse under the weight of it all. I needed to get out. I needed to find a way to leave this place, to escape, to wake up. But I couldn't. I knew that now. I had known it for a while. The house had claimed me the moment I had broken the rules. The moment I stepped into the cellar, the moment I ignored the warnings, the moment I opened the door to what should never have been disturbed. The whispers stopped, and for a moment everything was still. But the silence was worse than any noise. It pressed on my lungs, crushing the breath from my chest. The shadows around me deepened, growing longer, stretching out toward me like hands reaching out of the dark. I could feel them crawling along my skin, creeping under my flesh. And then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, just past the corner, there was a figure. It wasn't clear at first, not at all. It was just a dark shape, a silhouette that shifted in and out of focus. But as I moved closer, I saw it more clearly. It was a man, or at least it had been a man. His face was pale, stretched tight over the bones, eyes wide and vacant, as though he had seen too much and had lost whatever humanity he once had. He didn't move. He just stood there in the shadows, waiting, watching. I couldn't speak. I wanted to scream, but the scream caught in my throat, tangled with the pressure of everything, the weight of the house bearing down on me. The figure raised a hand. Slowly, deliberately. The fingers were long, too long, and they stretched out toward me, the movement unnatural. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His lips twisted, and I could see that the words he was trying to say were trapped somewhere, held back by something far worse than silence. And then the whisper came again, not from him but from everywhere. They never leave. Not really. Not once they've been here. I tried to move. I tried to run, but my body wouldn't obey. I couldn't escape. The house held me like a vice. I could feel it, feel the walls closing in, feel the cold seeping through my skin, through my bones deeper and deeper, until I was nothing but a part of this place. Part of the house. I had become it, and it had become me. The figure reached out, his hand hovering just inches from my face. His eyes were hollow black pits that swallowed the light, and as they locked onto mine, I felt everything I had ever known, everything I had ever been, slip away. In that moment I realized what had happened. What the house had done to me. I wasn't just trapped here. I was part of it. Part of the darkness. The house had claimed me like it had claimed all those who came before me, all those who had ignored the rules, the warnings, the signs. I wasn't going to leave. I would never leave. And then, as if the house itself had decided it was time, the shadows closed in. They surrounded me, thick and heavy, pulling me down, pulling me into the dark. The last thing I heard was the whisper, louder now, clearer than ever before. You're home now. And then everything went dark. I don't know how long it's been. Hours. Days. Time doesn't feel the same here. The house doesn't let time pass the way it should. I wake again, but the world is different now. The darkness is mine, and the silence is mine. The house has swallowed me whole. I walk its halls alone, but never truly alone. The shadows are always there, watching, waiting. The whispers never stop. They never go away. The house is my prison now. But I don't fight it anymore. I am part of it. And there is no escaping.